Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with a Vayne supplementary guide, and today we're going to be taking a look at on-hit Vayne. Now this used to be kind of the Vayne default build where you would build on-hit items such as Bork and Wits End, but nice, as you take a look at the top builds, you will see that generally the crit build with Stormrazor and Magnetic Blast, or at the minimum a Stormrazor here as you can see, is generally what is gone for now, and you can see items like the full crit is coming into play. So that's generally better now, mostly due to the fact that Vayne is really good against tanks, but not very good against squishies. So kind of the rationale of the crit build is that you want to get the crit damage to do well against squishies, and then your passive will do the tanks. And of course, crit also works very well against tanks, so that's why Vayne is going for crit right now. However, the on-hit build is amazing when you are against a very tanky team, which is what we're going to be facing in the upcoming gameplay. So how do you go for this tank build? Where I like to start with the Gluttonous Greaves for the early AD and the Omnivam. Now, attack speed boots does do really well on Vayne as well. But I think in the long run, like when you reach mid and late game, the Gluttonous Greaves Omnivam is going to come in real handy since a lot of your damage is true damage. And you get attack speed from your first 3 items. So first item is going to be Bork. For the early attack speed as well as the AD, physical vamp, of course, current health damage on hit, as well as the drain passive. Now, technically, you could swap the second item Terminus up as well to go for a Terminus first item, which again gives very similar stats, AD and attack speed, but it's a more expensive item. Magic damage on hit, as well as stacking resistances and stacking penetrations. So stacking penetration does still come into play when you auto for your auto attacks that doesn't proc your passive, right? So you know, it still matters, right? But it's just not as big of a deal compared to other champions. Then Wits End, very efficient item, 45% attack speed as well as 45 magic resist, and then more on-hit magic damage and healing when you're below half health as well. So generally, even if there isn't any AP on the enemy team, you can still go for this. I mean, the chance of having absolutely no AP is very slim. But I normally will go for this enemy because there simply really isn't a better item here. I guess you could go for something like Phantom Dancer just for the attack speed, but I still think this is the best way to go about it. And the last 2 items that I go for, I like to go for more tanky items. So here, you'll see that I start with the Twin Guard for the double resistances, as well as even more resistances when the passive procs. And with resistance, the best thing to go for next is actually go for health. Now here I just put Steric's Gauge as a default because it gives 400 max HP and a shield. Although this shield is not really amazing, simply due to the fact you don't actually have that much health in the first place. So you can go for other pure defensive items instead. For example, if you're against really heavy AP, you could go for something like Force of Nature. If you're against a lot of heavy AD, something like a Randuin's Omen, if I can find something, a Randuin's Omen here would be very good as well, because it also gives it 400 health, armor, and of course the countering the crit, especially if you're against meta champions like, for example, Yone and a crit ADC. You know, Randuin's is going to come in very handy as a last item. Basically what you want to do is go for 2 tanky last items, because you don't really need any more damage items at this point. So for the runes, I like to go for Lethal Tempo, of course, attack speed and range. Of course, we have Brutal, Giant Slayer, as well as Alacrity. The standard ADC loadout here, more attack speed, more on-hit damage, deal with the tanks, and Bone Plating, of course, with the defensive capabilities. Now, I guess if you really want it to be spicy, let's see if anyone's doing it. Nope, they're not. If you really want it to be spicy, you technically could go for something like Sudden Impact as well, because you do dash very often on Vayne, and you can get a lot of extra damage that way, but I personally would always go for the defensive option. Now for the spells, normally you're going to go for Flash and Cleanse, and the reason for that is you always want to play Vayne into tanky teams, and most tanks have CC, right? Because otherwise they basically do nothing as a tank, right? They generally have a lot of CC. Of course, there are exceptions like Mundo, for example, doesn't really have hard CC. Swain has really only 1 spell, things like that. But generally, most tanks have multiple CC spells, so Cleanse is normally what you want to go for. Now, if you can afford not to take Cleanse, Ghost is going to be your best bet to just run people down and, just to kite around in fights, right? So, anyways, with all that said, let's take a look at the gameplay. Okay, so let's take a look at the gameplay itself. Now, as I mentioned in the gameplay section of the video, we're in against a very tanky team. And now, generally, Vayne should always be playing against a very tanky team anyways. Generally, what I like to say is the minimum requirement to play Vayne is at least 3 tanks or 3 tanky champions. Now, with champions like, for example, Galio, Malphite, champions like these, they are tanks, but it's really hard to tell if they're going to be going for for AP or for tankiness. But before we look at that, you can see in the early part of the game, you see they get into a fight with us. Now, what you will notice here is Zeri has Conquer and I have Lethal Tempo. So the Lethal Tempo in like a level 1 fight is really insane of a rune, because the attack speed you get from Lethal Tempo will basically win you the fight. You can see I'm basically almost at full health. Look at Zeri and Galio, right? Zeri's 1 HP at this point. Galio is basically at like almost half HP. Right, and Zeri is trying to recall, and she finally gets it, and Galio is completely chunked, right? Now, the issue with this level 1 fight is that we can't really kill them level 1, because no one is really going to be stupid enough to kind of get run down, you know, by a Vayne at level 1. In fact, Zeri and Galio still have both their summoner spells. They didn't even use anything. They simply just walked away, recall, and Zeri didn't really even miss all that much, right? So, since I can't really do anything very much anyway, I'm, you know, just going to back off. Maybe try to cancel Galio's recall here, like so. Now Volibear is here. I don't think Volibear can really do very much either. But you guys, you know, get my point, right? That Vayne level 1 is not really that weak, depending on who you're facing. Especially if it's against a tank support, you can generally bully them quite a lot. Especially if they do what the Galio did right there, which is to walk straight up, right? But now back to the very original point I was trying to make. Minimum, to play Vayne, you want to be against 3 tanks. Right? Now, I can't even really talk about it, because here you see there is a fight in our jungle where Amumu and Vex are invading. I'm trying to make my way there. Amumu gets stunned up. Galio is now flashing in. I'm trying to focus the Galio, who is the easier target to kill. I'm trying to run him down, try to flash for him. And I almost get the kill on him, but I'm just a little bit too slow, and he has 2 teammates there to kind of cut off his escape. However, he's recalling around the bush, so condemn against the wall, auto, and I get the kill on him. Now, Vex and Zeri are not on top of me, but my teammates are coming, so I'm trying to focus down the Vex, who I think is probably going to escape. And I thought Zeri was a confirmed kill, but ends up Zeri goes over the wall with her flash, and does escape with her life. Now, honestly, if I focus on Zeri, I don't think we kill them anyway, because Zeri has flash and can flash over the wall. So, at the end of the day, nothing really lost, nothing really gained, right? I mean, we did gain a kill on Galio, but what I was trying to refer to is the situation choosing between attacking the Zeri and the Vex. Right, okay, so back to the original point I was trying to make if I have a couple of minutes to even talk. Right, minimum, you want to have 3 tanks against Vayne, otherwise you don't want to pick Vayne at all. Why? Because Vayne is really a champion that's built to counter tanks only, and the only reason why you would ever pick Vayne against anything less than 3 tanks is if Vayne is incredibly strong and in the meta, which she has not been for a very long time. In fact, even in the meta, like I think a couple months ago when tanks were buffed, like we had a tank patch, I don't know if it's more than a year ago or whatnot, but at this point when you've been playing Wild Rift for like 4 years or 5 years, I don't know, all the patches kind of just mesh together. Like something 3 years ago kind of feels like it's like a year ago or whatnot, but when they had the tank patch and tanks were buffed to the moon, even at that patch, I initially thought Vayne was very good, and then I realized you could just play on-hit Varus, you know, on-hit Kai'Sa, even like the weird picks like on-hit Jinx and on-hit Caitlyn, on-hit Zeri, even those had legs, and even people are still building those kind of builds now. So Vayne is kind of really out of place in the meta. She really isn't that amazing, mainly because she's very single target, she's not really very good in lane, and she really has, her strengths are really not good enough to kind of justify her weaknesses, right? And what I mean by that is Zeri nearly gets caught out by me, and Galio doesn't get caught out by Nami, and you get the kill on Galio. What I really mean by that is her main strength is killing tanks, right? And many champions can kind of replicate her strength, maybe not to the same degree, but to a very, very similar degree, right? And the weaknesses that she has are so egregious, like poor laning phase, single target damage, you know, things like that. Like the other champions that I just mentioned, like you know, like Jinx, Caitlyn, Varus, etc. A lot of champions that don't really build on hit but can, like they kind of cover up her weaknesses. So you'd rather pick those champions other than Vayne. So that's why in the long story version is that's why you want to have at least 3 tanks to warrant a Vayne pick, right? Now, of course, the ideal dream scenario is 4 tanks and an ADC against Vayne. Now, how is that possible? Well, just imagine this Galio was mid lane, Galio, and then let's say support, you have like an Alistar or something. So you would have like 4 tanks against a Vayne, right? So that's the most ideal scenario. But honestly, 3 tanks is already very ideal. Like you rarely have games that you have 3 tanks anyway. So I think this game is already kind of up there in terms of picking Vayne. But once again, as I said, Vayne is just not really the best champion, and honestly, even playing against 3 tanks, I would rather go for a crit build compared to an on-hit build. So here, Dragon taken by my team, stolen by Volibear. Now, there's a couple people stuck in the pit where I'm simply just running them down, and Amumu goes for a 3-man ult, I cleanse out, and Volibear finishes the kill. Now we're chasing the Zeri, Zeri realizes she's in trouble, flashes away, and we overall not just steal the dragon, but also win the fight. And so Zeri now is trying to defend the tower against all of us, but here we have 2 people on Herald, 3 people farming mid lane plates, and honestly, I thought that the Herald was free. I'm not sure if it's actually still free, but the enemy team is now starting to respawn. I'm now currently still thinking Herald is free, so my game plan here is actually to recall and go back bot lane. But turns out Herald is not as free as I thought. It's getting contested by Garen, and at the moment Galio and Vex are now on their way, and the fight is actually becoming messy with Amumu now making it to the pit. Now thankfully my team does secure the Herald, but they're all kind of dying for it, which is not really very good, so maybe I should have rotated there and helped out, but I honestly thought that we would secure the Herald before the enemy team even came. And the worst part is, another one of Vayne's weaknesses, right? Vayne has trash wave clear. Like, look at this, I have to single target focus a minion and clear it. I have no AoE spells, right? And in case you guys didn't know, Vayne is the only ADC in the game that has no AoE in her kit at all. Right, so you think about other single target champions like Varus, for example, not Varus, like Ezreal, for example. Even Ezreal has an ulti that can hit multiple people, right? Every other champion can hit multiple people. Varus Q, Kai'Sa Q, Sivir W, Caitlyn Q, Zeri Q W. All, basically every other ADC is able to hit multiple enemies at the same time, and as a result, means that they can clear the wave at the same time. Now, of course, the least ideal is a champion like Ezreal, who has to ult the wave to AoE clear the wave, which is kind of bad as well. Of course, Ezreal is also notorious for having poor wave clear, but Vayne doesn't even have the option of ulting the wave. She literally has to auto-attack the wave 1 minion at a time, and there's no other way that she can clear the wave. So that is really unfortunate. As here we're going super aggressive onto the Galio. Now unfortunately we run straight into the Zeri. Now we're in a 1v1 against Zeri. Galio's ulting in. We kill the Zeri before Galio comes. Get CC by Galio. Somehow we actually killed it. And not somehow, but Nami lands an insane bubble, allowing us to kill the Galio. And Amumu also gets bubbled, disengaging for us and allowing us to flash over the wall to safety, leaving us at 5-0 and 2 without actually dying, which is really, really insane. So now, we decide to actually grab the fruit and stick around so we can push in this wave, which is a horrible position, at the moment. So we're gonna get this wave pushed in, and then we can either try to force the tower or get a reset. Now, Volibear is now pinging that he's on the way, so I'm actually gonna go for the tower and then the Amumu. Volibear, unfortunately, I condemn Amumu into the wall, which kind of makes Volibear miss his spells, but I think CC is kind of a little bit more important than pure damage. So we get the CC onto Amumu. Amumu is left stunned up against the wall with no tower, and we get the kill on him. Now with that, we can finally get a reset, getting the Amumu assist, a tower, as well as a bunch of gold from the minions, etc. is more than enough to allow me to pick up the Terminus. And here, unfortunately, the red buff despawns the moment I land past the enchanted Hex Gates. And yeah, that's just a little bit unfortunate there. So now I'm just going to clear up the Krug since I'm already here. But the wave is kind of pushed all the way, and so there's not very much we can do. Now the issue is that if we take a look at the other lanes, there's not a lot we can do in other lanes as well, right? So here, since we're right next to Garen, we actually decide to just go aggressive on Garen for a little bit. Look at the damage we're doing to Garen, by the way. Now Garen is ulting in once again. I try to finish off Garen with the last auto. Garen lives on 1 HP. And here you can see I'm chunking Garen out completely. Chunking Zeri out completely. We get the kill on Zeri. Now we're trying to kite back. Unfortunately, Garen just Damasias and I just die to Garen, unfortunately. However, you can see that we are able to basically, or my team is able to basically clean up the kill. And now Amumu is the last person standing. Sorry, I'm not really panning the camera here. But you can see Amumu is not running away. Volibear is ulting in for the stun. And we're 3v1 against Amumu. Amumu is not going to survive. He is eventually going to die. Stuck in the cage now. Volibear completes the kill onto the Amumu. And this marks the time that I revive. And thankfully we can go back to watching first person view without having to pan the camera, which I did not even do. So now, just nice, the dragon has spawned, and we're going to go ahead and do the dragon. Enemy team does have a bounty on dragons and towers right now, so we definitely want to deny them if possible. So next up, we're gonna just again continue farming, deny the enemy team the Gromp, which Zeri was perhaps trying to get. And we can see Galio and Amumu in the mid lane. Amumu looks like he's pathing towards his blue buff, which he is. Now we can rotate over to try to stop him. Same with Galio and Nami. I'm walking behind Galio because I don't want to face check into Amumu. Galio gets a steal. Huge fight ends up going in. We get engaged upon. I have no cleanse up. We're able to kill Galio. Now cutting back. We actually punt Amumu away, but we get hit by the Vex ulti. And we get completely one-shot by the Vex, unfortunately. And now we're left in the same situation or similar. Vex now goes in on Nami. Gets the kill on Nami as well, but unfortunately, we are unable to get her for the time being as she flashes over the wall. And eventually, Gwen does pick up the kill on her, but Veigar does end up dying to Garen. So once again, don't actually end up panning the camera here. So sorry about that one, but thankfully nothing is actually happening anymore. You can see on the minimap that nothing much is really happening. Except the fact that the minions are kind of destroying our top lane tower. But most of it has already kind of died to the tower. So, I mean, I'm teleporting there. But, like, really, like, you can see only the next wave is here. I mean, collecting the next wave is still something. But it's not as good as collecting all those minions that died to the tower. Gwen even contests me for the minions, which is kind of tragic. No, thankfully we're not going to be able to go to the mid lane. Grab the minions there. And try to get our farm, maintain our farm up. Now, you can see at the current stage, me and Garen have almost the same goal at 10k, and Garen is actually incredibly fed. Now, if you guys remember my tier list, the reworked Garen, really kind of insane in terms of power and strength, right? In my opinion, at least. And here we have Zeri trying to clear mid lane. Now here you can see we are 5 men at Baron, and if we're already at Baron, we might as well be doing it, right? Garen is now trying to face check into the Baron. We're chunking the Baron at decently high speed. Now Amumu is coming in, runs into a Veigar cage stun, and we're gonna focus Garen since he's walking straight into us. Now we're gonna focus the Amumu, who's obviously been stuck in the pit for some time now, and then we secure the Baron. Veigar of all people secures the Baron, and then we get kills onto 3 people, and with that we can use this opportunity to push down mid lane and, you know, grab some towers. Volley in the meanwhile pushing top. Now here Vex ults me, but I wasn't really sure if she was actually going to take that ult, but I had my stasis available. I actually bought stasis right after I died to the Vex the previous time, especially to counter the Vex engage, because I'm realizing that currently there's not a lot of threat onto me. Like, I guess you could say Amumu and Galio engaging are threats, but I think the biggest threat to me is really the engage coming in from the Vex. So I'm really scared of the Vex. I decide to get the stasis for the Vex. I also have Wit's End for the Vex. Of course, the magic resist against Wit's End helps against the Vex, and I guess the Galio as well. But Galio is like 0 and 7, so he's not a major issue at the moment. Of course, he could become a problem later, so getting you know, MR and a stasis is going to be really, really helpful here. Now we have the Baron pushing in the bot lane as well. We can see multiple enemies around the area. Gwen and Nami are near me. Nami sends a wave into basically face check, allowing me to kind of walk in. Now here we spot the entire enemy team here. I take the ward right in front of their faces, and I really am not that scared. Right? I have flash, cleanse, and stasis up. Like, I believe if Amumu engages on me, I think that he basically starts a losing fight for his team. Of course, I could be just throwing the game there. But I honestly don't think I have anything to be afraid of. I'm walking up. I know Garen is on the flank behind us. And here I have a choice of trying to stop the flanking Garen, which is what I choose to do. Making Garen basically fight a 1v5. Or I can turn onto I can turn onto Amumu and Zeri instead. But I decide to, of course, go for the Garen, who's, again, he is their most fed member by a mile, right? But he is kind of trolling. And so is this Amumu. What's Amumu doing here? Yeah, we're running him down. And we pick up the kill onto him. At this point, my team is kind of pushing into the base of the enemy team. Now, Vex goes in with the ulti onto the Veigar. Veigar tries to retaliate, is able to one-shot the Vex with his full combo, and Vex is not able to one-shot him. And now here's Zeri getting attacked by me over the wall. And she's also attacking me over the wall, but she's not really doing all that much damage. So here we've got the mid lane inhib. Now we're going for the side lane inhibs, but Gather is going in, and I'm kind of getting, I guess you could say, distracted by them. And here, in the meanwhile, my team has picked up the soul. Now, I really don't quite care about the soul at this point. I really just want to push in the inhibitors, like what we did just here. So we now have triple inhibitors, but with the whole enemy team respawning, it's pretty hard to actually end the game. The enemy team does surrender though, so we do end up winning the game anyways. So with that, I'm going to thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.